I was like, hey, I'd like to start a body jewelry company. And if I can make a little bit of money on the side, maybe I won't have to kill myself trying to sell these goddamn phone book listings. In the 12 or 13 years since Plug Your Holes has been founded, I've met a lot of interesting people and I've experienced a lot of very interesting things myself, and I'm a sucker for a good story. And so we're going to do this story series with a bunch of our friends from all over the world, and we're going to tell you some of our best stories. And here's one of mine. A lot of people are familiar with the origin story of Plug Your Holes and how I bought a bunch of PS3s, Nintendo Wiis, and Tickle Me Elmos when they all came out. And I sold them on eBay to raise some startup capital. And I'll tell that more in detail later. But a lot of people don't know why I started Plug Your Holes. In 2006, I had been in a few bands. None that were huge by any stretch, but they were big enough to keep me on the road and to avoid some responsibility decisions like going to college or getting a real job or something like that. In the summer of 2006, I found myself without a band and the decision to have to go home and get a real job. So my former drummer, Winter, reached out to me and said, hey, you can sell things. How about you come work where I work? And it was at a small independent phone book, something that seems kind of silly right now, and I imagine they probably digitized over the years and became something more relevant. My job was to go around to local businesses and convince them that they needed to buy advertising in this little tiny free phone book. It's called Smart Search. I worked that job for about 1 month. And this is the fall of 2006. I'm 23 years old. I'm covered in tattoos and I have big holes in my ears. And if you own a business, as I have for 12 or 13 years now, and some 23-year-old comes in and pretends like they know how to do your job or tell you something that you need that you've never thought of before, you're probably going to be pretty dismissive of the entire idea because you've been doing this a long time and this is some 23-year-old punk kid. Didn't help that I was showing up in a 1993 Dodge Dynasty. It wasn't exactly the best salesman car. After about a month, I think I made a total of $1,000 in commissions. Maybe it was 6 weeks or something like that. And I worked my ass off, and I probably put $400 in gas in that car. Not to mention a muffler and oil changes and every other thing. At the end of that 6 weeks or whatever it was, the book had to go to print. So we had 4 months off until delivery time. And I told myself that there's no way in hell I'm going back to that job. But the only real experience that I have other than that is cooking. And I'd worked in a lot of kitchens. I didn't want to go back to that either. Cooking is a hard, hot, miserable, stinky existence, and anybody who's done it knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I grew up in a tourist town. Duluth, Minnesota is crazy busy in the summer, crazy dead in the winter, and when it's busy, you are going nonstop. And when it's dead, you're probably sitting at home watching ESPN. At the same time, I had started to sell small amounts of body jewelry on eBay and had kind of a hang of it and had some distributors and wholesalers and things like that. So sometime in September, I reached out to a buddy of mine who had done some web work for me. He had built me a website, done some t-shirt designs, things like that. His name's Jeff, and he's very successful in his own right now. But I was like, hey, I'd like to start a body jewelry company. And if I can make a little bit of money on the side, maybe I won't have to kill myself trying to sell these goddamn phone book listings. And his family had actually been in the body jewelry industry a few years prior, and they said, this is a hard industry to get in. And at the time it was. There wasn't a lot of demand. This is 2006. The internet was around, but it wasn't as accessible as it is right now. Now, half the people I know pretty much buy everything they own on the internet, and I'm one of those people as well. But back then, people still had their apprehensions. There was a lot of security issues, and people felt a little uncomfortable giving their credit card information. Most people didn't even have a PayPal. So despite Jeff's warnings and probably my better judgment, we built a website. And one of the big important parts about building a website is coming up with a name. And I think we spent 4 or 5 hours thinking of what to call this company. I was pretty specific. I wanted it to be something that was memorable. I didn't want it to be a .net. I didn't want it to have dashes or anything like that. I just wanted it to be name.com, whatever it might be. And so we sat there until the wee hours of the morning trying to come up with different names that the domain was available for, and over and over again they weren't. We were getting kind of loopy. And at one point in time, we just started throwing out joke names, and Plug Your Holes is one of those, and it's stuck. And I really liked it. I woke up the next morning, I'd already owned the domain along with 20 others or so. And I'm like, that's the one. That's the one. Plug Your Holes. PlugYourHoles.com. We're going to do that. September 27th, 2006. We launched PlugYourHoles.com. And I'll get into some of the more interesting details about the beginning periods in another video, but I think it's funny that the reason that there is a PlugYourHoles.com is because I might be the worst phone book salesman on earth, but I might know a thing or two about plugs. So there you go. That's why I started PlugYourHoles.com.